A porcelain teacup clattered to the floor, shattering the quiet morning and the fragile veneer of a perfect life. In that split second, the entire world of millionaire entrepreneur Jonathan Harrington imploded. Whispers of betrayal and deceit rippled through the opulent halls of his mansion as the pregnant wife he adored lay trembling from a dangerous dose of poison. But the true shock awaited in the courtroom when the identity of the poisoner, Jonathan's own mistress, was revealed, and his reaction left everyone speechless. Sit tight, this is the story of forbidden passion, devastating secrets, and the ultimate fight for redemption. From the moment Jonathan Harrington stepped onto the stage at a New York tech convention 10 years ago, the world took notice. He wasn't just another startup founder in a well-fitted suit. He was a visionary, a charmer, someone who could convince a boardroom full of venture capitalists that his idea would revolutionize global communication. The day he unveiled his platform Centera was the beginning of a meteoric rise to fortune. Fast forward to the present, and Jonathan's name is synonymous with the kind of modern wealth that dazzles an entire generation. His net worth, according to a speculative article in Forbes, was rumored to exceed $2 billion. Whether it was accurate or not didn't matter. Perception was everything, and Jonathan had an enviable talent for cultivating an aura of success. It showed in every facet of his life, from the elegantly sleek black Rolls-Royce parked outside his Manhattan high-rise to the lavish dinners he hosted for top-tier philanthropists. He was no stranger to the media either. His marriage to the poised and radiant Victoria Palmer, now Victoria Harrington, had been splashed across the society pages. She was the daughter of affluent real estate magnate Charles Palmer, a man who had once shaken hands with Bill Gates at a private philanthropic summit in Seattle. Growing up among the elite, Victoria was used to the luxurious environment that came with old money. But the synergy of her background and Jonathan's new tech wealth created an unstoppable power couple in the eyes of the press. Life for Jonathan and Victoria was nothing short of idyllic, or so it seemed. The polished glimmer of their public image could have fooled anyone. And for a time, perhaps it fooled even them. Their marriage was anchored in mutual ambition, well-timed affection, and the shared dream of building an empire that would stand the test of time. The Harringtons owned several properties across the globe. Their main residence was a sprawling estate outside the city in an affluent suburb that boasted manicured lawns and horse-riding clubs. The estate had been redesigned by a world-renowned architect, featuring heated marble floors, a glass-enclosed atrium, and meticulously curated artwork from all corners of the world. It was also the perfect venue for glamorous dinner parties, and they were known to invite influential figures from celebrity chef Marcus Reynolds, who once cooked for them personally, to the city's young philanthropists and foreign diplomats. Over 600 guests once attended a lavish fundraiser for children's education that they hosted. Photographs of Jonathan and Victoria smiling graciously with the tall windows of their mansion, shimmering behind them decorated pages of Vogue and Town and Country. Still in the hush of the night, doubts tiptoed like faint ghosts around the grand corridors of the Harrington estate. After 5 years of marriage, the couple had struggled to conceive a child. When it finally happened, Victoria becoming pregnant, everyone assumed their happiness was now complete. The baby would be the heir to their kingdom, bridging two powerful families and guaranteeing a future. In the final months of her pregnancy, Victoria glowed with that mythical radiance often attributed to expectant mothers, even as she navigated the social swirl of luncheons and philanthropic gatherings. Within these walls of grandeur, however, an undercurrent of secrecy churned. Jonathan's frequent work trips often extended to nights in luxury hotels, and rumors quietly circulated among the staff about a mysterious woman seen in whispered phone calls. Occasionally, Victoria noticed receipts on her husband's desk for opulent dinners at exclusive restaurants, though he claimed them to be client meetings. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that the man she had married, a charismatic dreamer, was merely pouring his energy into his blossoming empire. But illusions have a tendency to crack. A faint sense of unease nestled in Victoria's heart, especially as she felt the life growing inside her. She started noticing the unspoken tension whenever Jonathan's phone lit up with a text message. She felt an odd vibe when he'd return from business dinners just a little too late with a forced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Yet the Harrington facade stood strong. In the eyes of the world, Jonathan and Victoria were the epitome of a perfect power couple. No one suspected that a storm was about to descend, one so devastating it would shatter every notion of stability they had meticulously built. In a crowded coffee shop near the Centera headquarters, Sasha Moretti was used to turning heads. She dressed elegantly in a style that merged designer sophistication with an undercurrent of daring. Men often stared and some women glared, but Sasha had grown comfortable with the attention. At 28, she was a rising star in software marketing, having joined Centera's marketing department fresh out of business school. Sharp-minded with a confidence that radiated in every presentation she gave, Sasha soon caught the eye of none other than Jonathan Harrington. It began innocently enough: late-night brainstorming sessions, a shared passion for brand building, and an eagerness to push boundaries. Jonathan was taken in by her brilliance. Sasha was enthralled by the aura of power that enveloped him. Compliments turned into private dinners. Private dinners turned into stolen kisses in the backseat of a chauffeured car. Before either could articulate the morality of what they were doing, they found themselves entangled in a passionate affair. Jonathan's marriage was hardly the typical union. In truth, he was enthralled by Victoria's sophistication and her unwavering support. Still, he and Victoria had drifted into a comfortable pattern that, despite genuine affection, lacked the impulsive spark that once defined their relationship. Sasha, on the other hand, represented excitement, an intense desire and ambition to match his own. She challenged him. She ignited the fire he feared was dying within him. Their clandestine relationship only intensified over time. Every moment they spent together was a testament to their inability to resist each other. But complications were inevitable. Sasha had begun to question the endgame. "You're going to leave her one day, aren't you?" she'd murmur as she pressed her head against Jonathan's chest in a candlelit suite at the Ritz-Carlton. Jonathan would sigh, neither fully affirming nor denying her plea. Torn by his own guilt, he never gave her a definitive promise about divorcing Victoria. In Sasha's mind, she was winning a race she couldn't articulate. She had won Jonathan's affections, but not his public acknowledgement. She saw him lavish unimaginable sums on gifts for Victoria, fine jewelry from Cartier, exclusive dresses from European fashion houses, while her trinkets, though expensive by normal standards, paled in comparison. The difference stung her pride. Eventually, after one too many nights alone, Sasha's envy became a toxic swirl of frustration and anger. She was aware that Victoria was pregnant. Sasha even rationalized that she was helping Jonathan break free from a life of monotony. In her twisted reasoning, she felt justified in wanting Victoria and the unborn child out of Jonathan's life. But when jealousy morphs into desperation, darkness can invade the psyche. That's precisely what began to happen to Sasha. She started making subtle inquiries about toxins, reading up on colorless, tasteless poisons. In an online forum for horticultural enthusiasts, she learned about certain plants that could be deadly if ingested. She didn't think she'd ever go that far. At least not at first. But day by day her thoughts grew more sinister. The barrier between "I couldn't possibly" and "I might actually" wore down. Meanwhile, Jonathan became increasingly careless. Perhaps it was arrogance, a belief that he was too powerful to face consequences, or maybe the glimmer in Sasha's eyes blinded him to reality. He promised her trips to Europe and Asia once everything settled down. He even admitted that once the baby was born, maybe he'd sort out his marriage. Sasha didn't like the timeline. She detested the idea of waiting any longer. One evening, while sipping on a glass of red wine in her upscale loft in Chelsea, Sasha entertained a dangerous thought. Could she remove Victoria from the equation entirely? Poison seemed too straightforward, but it also felt like the most direct route to achieving her dream. She envisioned a scenario in which Victoria's health declined mysteriously. Jonathan, grief-stricken, would then cling to Sasha. A twisted fantasy, yes, but it provided a sense of perverse comfort to a woman losing her grip on reality. She began stashing small vials of suspicious substances in her vanity drawer. The tension in her mind escalated as she researched more potent toxins online. With every plan she concocted, a flicker of rational thought would resurface, telling her to abandon such madness. But obsession once ignited can seldom be extinguished by logic alone. And so the mistress slowly prepared for the unthinkable act that would shake the Harrington empire at its core. It all came to a head one unseasonably warm afternoon in late February. A few days prior, Sasha had discovered that Victoria would be alone at the Harrington estate while Jonathan attended a weekend conference in Los Angeles. Rumor had it that Victoria's condition kept her from flying comfortably in her final trimester. Sasha listened closely to staff chatter, gleaning every detail about the estate's daily routine. She learned that Victoria often spent late afternoons in the conservatory sipping her favorite herbal teas, a ritual to calm her nerves. Sasha viewed this as her perfect window of opportunity. That Saturday morning, she disguised herself as a courier using a cap and oversized jacket embroidered with a reputable delivery company's logo. She carried a small, inconspicuous box as her guise for access past the estate's security gate. It worked. The guard barely looked up before waving her in, too preoccupied with a personal phone call. Once inside, Sasha deftly found her way to the conservatory, a stunning glass-encased room brimming with exotic plants and Victorian-style wicker furniture. Filtered sunlight illuminated the shimmering leaves and the fragrance of jasmine filled the air. Sasha heard footsteps approaching, soft, slow steps. Victoria appeared, belly gently prominent beneath a flowing white dress, her hands supporting her lower back. She looked radiant, albeit slightly weary from the pregnancy. Victoria appeared momentarily taken aback to see a stranger in the conservatory. "Yes?" she asked politely, her voice tinged with curiosity. Sasha felt a jolt of adrenaline surge through her veins. She forced a smile. "Delivery for Mrs. Harrington," she said, her accent slightly masked. "I'm supposed to place this box here in the conservatory for you. Special instructions," they said. Victoria eyed the box skeptically, yet in typical gracious form she nodded and pointed to a small coffee table. "Oh, perhaps it's from one of Jonathan's overseas associates," she mused. "Just leave it there." Sasha set the box down, her heart pounding so loudly she feared Victoria might hear. Concealed in her jacket pocket was a small glass vial filled with a concoction she had meticulously prepared. Her plan was dangerously simple: slip the poison into Victoria's teacup when no one was looking. A stroke of luck, though not for Victoria, came in the form of a phone call. The estate's landline rang and Victoria excused herself, stepping into an adjacent corridor to answer it. Sasha seized the moment. In 3 quick strides, she found the teapot resting on a portable tray near a row of potted orchids. With trembling hands, she poured the toxin into the teapot and gently swirled it. It dissolved without trace. Heart in her throat, Sasha retreated to a corner, pretending to examine an exotic orchid. Victoria returned moments later, apologizing with a warm smile. "That was the hospital calling to confirm my next appointment." She exhaled slowly and sat in her wicker chair, picking up the pot of tea. Sasha felt a twisted thrill run through her. She was about to witness her rival sip poison. Just then, an unexpected interruption occurred. The housekeeper, Ms. Dolores Hernandez, a longtime employee of the Harrington family, walked into the conservatory carrying a basket of laundry. She recognized a discrepancy immediately. "Excuse me," Ms. Hernandez said, her voice tinged with suspicion as she eyed Sasha. "I didn't realize we had a delivery scheduled today." Sasha felt her pulse spike. She fumbled for words, carefully avoiding Ms. Hernandez's gaze. "Oh, just a special item from abroad. I was told to bring it directly to Mrs. Harrington," Sasha murmured. Before Dolores could respond, Victoria poured herself a cup of tea. The delicate china cup clinked against the saucer as she lifted it to her lips. Sasha's stomach twisted in a conflicted mixture of exhilaration and horror. Dolores hovered in the conservatory, suspicious eyes watching every movement. Victoria sipped. Within seconds, her face contorted. She grimaced at the bitterness. That's odd, she muttered. This tea tastes off. Did I brew it too strongly? She took a second sip, less hesitant this time, but enough to swallow a gulp. A sudden tightness gripped her abdomen. Victoria's complexion paled and she fanned herself as though the room's temperature had shot upward. Sweat formed along her hairline. Concern etched across Dolores's face. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "You look unwell." Victoria tried to speak but managed only a feeble whisper. Her vision blurred. She clutched her belly as a wave of dizziness slammed into her. Dolores rushed to her side, supporting her before she could collapse to the floor. Sasha in the corner felt an instant wave of guilt and panic. This wasn't just an idea or a fleeting fantasy anymore. This was real, happening right before her eyes. "What's happening?" Victoria gasped. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Dolores shot a sharp glance at Sasha. "You call 911 quickly!" she barked, too frantic to question the so-called courier's presence further. Sasha knew she had to leave. She muttered something unintelligible and dashed out of the conservatory, the sound of Victoria's labored breathing echoing behind her. As she fled, she could hear Dolores crying out, "Stay with me, Mrs. Harrington, breathe. Help is on the way." The moment Sasha slipped out of the estate and back past the security gate still manned by the distracted guard, she realized there was no turning back. If Victoria survived, she might suspect sabotage. If she died, Sasha would be complicit in murder. Either outcome felt impossibly terrifying. Somehow Sasha convinced herself it was worth the risk. She pictured a future with Jonathan by her side, free from the constraints of a marriage that stifled him. And as she sped away, tears of madness and regret blurred her vision. The world outside was none the wiser to the heinous crime just committed. An ambulance spiraled through the mansion's circular driveway, neon lights staining the white gravel a frantic red. Paramedics rushed into the conservatory where Dolores knelt beside a nearly unconscious Victoria. Her breathing was shallow, skin clammy to the touch, and her pulse fluttered weakly. "Possible poisoning," one of the paramedics said grimly after a quick assessment. "We need to stabilize her immediately." They carefully placed Victoria on a stretcher. Outside the estate, staff exchanged worried glances and hushed prayers. Dolores was visibly shaken as she briefed the head of security, Mark Roberts, about the suspicious courier. "I'd never seen her before," she explained, tears lining her eyes. "She came with a box. Said it was a special delivery for Mrs. Harrington." Something about her felt off. Mark's expression darkened. He alerted the estate manager, who immediately called Jonathan in Los Angeles. He was in the middle of a roundtable discussion with prominent tech investors when he saw the repeated calls from home. He excused himself, stepping into a corridor to learn that his pregnant wife was being rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Within hours, Jonathan was on a private jet bound for New York. Panic churned in his chest. All the success, all the money, all the future deals. None of it mattered if Victoria and their unborn child were in danger. Thoughts of Sasha flickered through his mind, but he quickly dismissed them in a swirl of guilt. He needed to be by Victoria's side no matter what. By the time Jonathan arrived at the hospital, it was nearing midnight. A somber hush enveloped the corridors. He found Dolores in the waiting area, clutching a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee. "Mr. Harrington," she said, standing abruptly. Her usually calm demeanor was marred by obvious distress. "They're running tests. They suspect some kind of toxin in her system, but they're not sure which one yet." Jonathan's eyes glistened with fear as he gazed toward the intensive care unit. "How is she?" "The baby." Dolores trembled. "They said she stabilized a bit, but it's touch and go. The doctors are working around the clock." As though summoned, Dr. Samuel Harris, one of the hospital's leading obstetricians, stepped forward. He recognized Jonathan immediately. Everyone knew who Jonathan Harrington was, thanks to countless media features. "Mr. Harrington," Dr. Harris spoke softly. "We've managed to stabilize your wife for now, but the baby is at risk. The substance introduced into her system appears to cause severe distress and can induce labor prematurely. She's only in her 8th month. We're doing everything we can." Jonathan's heart felt like it was being crushed. But who would do something like this? It was the question no one could answer yet. In the hush of the hospital corridor, Jonathan clenched his jaw, suspicion swirling. He recalled Sasha's emotional plea from weeks earlier, her frustration about the baby. She had never come out and threatened Victoria, but Jonathan had detected bitterness in her tone. A swirl of dread overtook him. Could Sasha be involved in this? He brushed the thought aside momentarily to deal with the immediate crisis. Over the next 2 days, doctors worked tirelessly to flush the toxins from Victoria's body. They administered medications to delay premature labor and carefully monitored the baby's vitals. Miraculously, Victoria began to recover enough to open her eyes. When she finally regained coherent consciousness, she blinked at Jonathan, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. "Our baby," she croaked, voice hoarse. Jonathan gently cradled her hand in his. "The baby is fighting just like you." Victoria looked frightened and exhausted. For a moment she seemed to consider something unspoken. Then in a shaky voice she described the courier and the odd taste of the tea. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but I swear that woman put something in my tea." The next day the Harrington estate underwent a full sweep. Police investigators arrived, gathering statements, checking security footage, and speaking with staff. A partial camera angle from the estate's gate showed Sasha's disguised silhouette, though the footage was too grainy for a positive ID. Mark Roberts provided the approximate time of entry, which aligned perfectly with the moment Victoria drank her tea. Jonathan forced himself to connect the dots. He recalled random mentions Sasha had made about exploring new gardens, exotic plants, poisons in nature. During one of their more intimate moments, she had teased about deadly secrets hidden in plain sight. At the time, he dismissed it as flirtatious banter, but now it resembled a cryptic admission of knowledge about toxins. Racked with guilt, Jonathan didn't sleep for days. While his wife remained in precarious condition, the police launched a formal investigation into the suspected poisoning. Jonathan's entire body seemed to vibrate with tension whenever his phone buzzed, and each time he half expected a text from Sasha, or perhaps the police revealing the next piece of a horrifying puzzle. Victoria's father, Charles Palmer, arrived at the hospital soon after, bringing along a lawyer, Philip Radcliffe, known for his prowess in high-stakes cases. Both men were determined to find whoever did this and see them punished to the fullest extent of the law. Charles wasted no time in urging Jonathan to be forthright with the authorities. Jonathan struggled to hide his internal panic. He had to come clean about Sasha. There was no alternative if he wanted to save himself and possibly Victoria. An unspoken tension thickened in the hospital room whenever the topic of that unknown woman was raised. Victoria sensed that Jonathan was holding something back. Through bleary eyes, she watched him wrestle with his phone and avoid her direct questions. Suspicion formed in her mind like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Finally, on the 4th night, Jonathan cracked under the weight of his conscience. He confessed to Victoria about the affair with Sasha Moretti, the marketing prodigy at Centera, the woman who had become his secret lover. He told her everything from the seemingly innocent late meetings to Sasha's increasingly erratic behavior. Victoria, her face etched with heartbreak, let tears flow silently. She neither lashed out nor spoke accusations. The sorrow in her eyes, however, said it all. "I had no idea she'd do something like this," Jonathan whispered, voice ragged. "I'm so sorry. I was a fool." The next morning, the police showed up with more evidence. Partial fingerprints matching Sasha's known records at Centera, and eyewitness statements that placed Sasha's car near the Harrington estate. The puzzle pieces were forming a damning picture. Within hours, a warrant was issued for Sasha Moretti's arrest. Sasha was at her Chelsea loft when the pounding on the door echoed through the corridors. She had been living in a state of heightened anxiety since the day she fled the Harrington estate. The morning news bulletins hinted at an attempted murder investigation in one of New York's most affluent neighborhoods, but no names had been officially released. Still, she knew. She sensed the net closing around her. She had tried to call Jonathan multiple times only to be met with unanswered rings and short text messages demanding she stay away. She scrolled through social media in a haze looking for any sign that the news had broken publicly. The tension was unbearable. When the police burst in, guns drawn, it was almost a relief. 2 officers placed her under arrest, reading her Miranda rights as she numbly stared at the wall. She whispered no protests, uttered no pleas for explanation. It was as if she had accepted a destiny she once thought would pave the way to her happily ever after. Instead, it carried her to a police station in handcuffs. News traveled fast. By that afternoon, every major outlet from the New York Times to local tabloids had latched onto the story of the pregnant Harrington heiress's poisoning and the subsequent arrest of Jonathan Harrington's mistress. Video clips of Sasha being escorted by officers swamped social media. The public devoured every morsel of gossip. Centerra's stock price took a nosedive, overshadowed by the scandal swirling around its high-profile founder. The court arraignment hearing was scheduled swiftly. Cameras flashed outside the courthouse, capturing Sasha's stoic face. Inside, her lawyer, Meredith Caldwell, argued unsuccessfully for bail. The presiding judge, Judge Caroline White, cited the gravity of the crime, potential flight risk, and the severe condition of the victim as reasons to keep Sasha in custody. From her hospital bed, Victoria watched the media coverage in stunned silence. She felt an odd combination of vindication and utter devastation. On one hand, the woman who had nearly killed her and her unborn child was behind bars. On the other, the betrayal by Jonathan cut deep. She still loved him, but the bedrock of trust between them had been irreparably cracked. Meanwhile, Jonathan, haunted by guilt, found himself pressed by lawyers, brand managers, and family advisors. They insisted on damage control, issuing carefully worded statements to the press, emphasizing that Jonathan had cooperated fully with the authorities. But no matter how elegantly spun, the statements could not erase the scandal's stain. During one particularly chaotic day, Jonathan held an internal meeting at Centerra, addressing the entire staff via a company-wide webcast. He apologized for any distractions caused by his personal issues, promising that Centerra's vision remained intact. The staff responded with polite applause, but he could sense their unease. The scandal was too big to ignore, and rumors ran rampant in break rooms and online forums. That evening, Jonathan returned to the hospital, slipping past the paparazzi stationed at every entrance. He quietly entered Victoria's dimly lit room, where monitors beeped softly, tracking both mother and child. She lay propped against pillows, her eyes drifting toward him. Jonathan approached her bed carefully, taking a seat. How do you feel?" She inhaled shakily. "The doctors say the baby and I are recovering. I'll live, but I can't forget what she did." Her voice caught. "Or that you brought her into our lives." He bowed his head, remorse bending his posture. "I know. I'm so sorry." She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. "What happens now, Jonathan?" "That's up to you," he replied softly. "But know that I will do everything in my power to protect you and the baby and fix whatever can be fixed." Victoria didn't respond. Her silence was more punishing than words could ever be. And Jonathan knew, no matter how fiercely he tried to make amends, some wounds do not heal overnight, if at all. Even as Victoria's condition improved, the swirl of public attention intensified. Legal analysts crowded primetime talk shows, dissecting every detail of the case. A once private life was now laid bare under a microscope. Sasha Moretti was painted as a villain, Victoria Harrington as the wronged angel, and Jonathan as a philandering billionaire caught in the middle. But the real storm was yet to rage. The preliminary hearing and subsequent trial promised an explosive unveiling of motives, confessions, and heartbreak that would capture the world's attention. The morning of the preliminary hearing at the New York Supreme Court broke gray and cold, a stark contrast to the heated anticipation swirling around the proceedings. Spectators formed a line down the block, eager to witness the latest spectacle in the Harrington scandal. Satellite trucks and news anchors cluttered the courthouse steps. The story had ballooned beyond mere gossip. It was a cultural obsession, shining a light on the underbelly of wealth, power, and envy. Sasha was led into the courtroom in handcuffs, wearing a charcoal gray business suit. Her once vibrant eyes appeared clouded with fear and defiance. Seated in the front row was Jonathan, flanked by attorneys. Beside him, Victoria sat in a wheelchair, her belly still pronounced, but her body too frail to walk steadily on her own. The hush that fell over the courtroom as they entered felt electric, charged with unspoken accusations. Judge Caroline White presided, her reputation for no-nonsense rulings preceding her. She scanned the room, unimpressed by the media presence. When the case was called, the prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Jeremy Collins, rose to deliver opening remarks. "Your Honor," Collins began, voice resonant in the silent chamber, "this is no ordinary assault case. The victim, Victoria Harrington, was 8 months pregnant when the defendant, Sasha Moretti, allegedly attempted to take both her life and the life of her unborn child with a poisonous substance." Meredith Caldwell. Sasha's attorney countered by painting a portrait of an unstable woman driven by unrequited love, but also invoked claims of insufficient evidence. Nothing conclusively tied Sasha to the poisoning, except the suspicious circumstances and partial fingerprints. "We have yet to see definitive proof," Caldwell argued. "My client was not caught in the act. She has an alibi for part of the timeline. The evidence is circumstantial at best, but the prosecution was prepared. They showed grainy security footage capturing Sasha's disguised figure at the estate gate, time-stamped minutes before Victoria's collapse. They presented testimonies from staff members who described a stranger in a courier uniform. They offered records of Sasha's online searches about poisonous plants and how to administer them discreetly. The prosecution believed the case was airtight. Jonathan took the stand as a key witness. The courtroom stilled. He cleared his throat, clearly agitated. Collins led him through a series of questions, establishing his role as the tech mogul husband to the victim and clandestine lover to the defendant. When asked to describe his relationship with Sasha, Jonathan's voice quivered. "We were involved," he confessed. The swirl of camera flashes in the back told him that every word was being documented. As for motive, the prosecution pinned it squarely on Sasha's jealousy of Victoria and her unborn child. They referenced text messages one Sasha had sent Jonathan, implying that their future together would be easier if only you were single again. Jonathan admitted he had not taken these messages seriously, brushing them off as venting. The regret in his expression told the court how deeply he wished he had paid more attention. Then came Victoria's turn to provide her testimony. Her father, Charles Palmer, looked on protectively from the gallery. Despite her physical weakness, Victoria's voice carried a quiet strength. She described the day Sasha arrived, the suspicious box, the odd taste of the tea, and the dizzying darkness that followed. Emotion broke through as she recalled the terror of potentially losing her baby. The entire courtroom seemed to inhale collectively, absorbing the rawness of a mother's near loss. Caldwell attempted to probe Victoria's story for inconsistencies, hinting that the poison might have come from another source. "Isn't it true that the Harrington estate also keeps various chemicals for gardening purposes?" Caldwell asked. "Could those not have contaminated your tea?" Victoria's eyes glistened. "The staff follows strict safety protocols. I trust my staff. They've been with our family for years. They would never do such a thing." At times, Sasha glowered at Victoria, her composure fraying when the narrative of her guilt solidified. She scribbled notes rapidly, occasionally whispering fervent instructions to her attorney. Jonathan felt torn eyes cast downward, struggling with the reality that his own testimony was burying the woman he once shared a bed with. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. A statement from Jonathan's publicist insisted that he was cooperating fully with the authorities and prioritizing his family's well-being. Public opinion was largely sympathetic to Victoria, though many were enthralled by the lurid details of Jonathan's infidelity. Sasha quickly became a reviled figure, though a few social media comments painted her as a scapegoat, suggesting the power of the Harrington family could have orchestrated her downfall. But the evidence was damning. The preliminary hearing concluded with the judge deciding that the case had sufficient weight to proceed to a full trial. There would be more witnesses, forensic experts, and likely deeper dives into Sasha's and Jonathan's digital footprints. Jonathan, exhausted and despondent, looked at Victoria's pale face and recognized that no matter the trial's outcome, life as they once knew it was shattered forever. The trial gripped the nation, its courtroom scenes broadcast in news recaps and splashed across the front pages. And just as the drama reached its apex, Victoria, now a mother to a prematurely born yet thriving baby girl named Grace, made her return, delicate, determined, and flanked by security and support. She sat in a wheelchair, her composure resolute, holding Grace in her arms with a tenderness that magnified her quiet strength. Jonathan stood beside her, visibly shaken but ever present. Every move he made in court was closely analyzed, especially now with his betrayal public knowledge. But none of it compared to the tension that simmered when Sasha Moretti was led into the courtroom in handcuffs, her expression a volatile mix of desperation and icy control. Sasha wore a conservative gray suit, but the fire in her eyes betrayed her calm exterior. The media dubbed her the poison mistress, and her defense team clung to one last lifeline, the claim of diminished capacity. Her attorney, Meredith Caldwell, argued passionately that Sasha had been emotionally manipulated and abandoned, her mental health compromised by the emotional whiplash inflicted by Jonathan Harrington. She was promised a future, Caldwell said during her closing remarks. A life together. She was not simply a mistress, she believed she was the woman he would choose. When that dream was dashed and the other woman's pregnancy sealed her fate, my client unraveled. But Assistant District Attorney Jeremy Collins was unrelenting. He paced slowly before the jury during his final argument, letting the gravity of his words settle with each measured step. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have seen is not a woman pushed to the brink by heartbreak. What you've seen is a woman who planned, calculated, and executed an attempt to eliminate another human being and an unborn child because she saw them as obstacles. This was not desperation. This was murder disguised as romance. The digital trail didn't lie online purchases of plant-based poisons, search history full of how to mask bitterness in tea, and even screenshots of text messages to a friend that read, "If she's out of the picture, he'll finally be mine." As the jury was sent into deliberation, Victoria and Jonathan remained silent, tucked into a quiet alcove just outside the courtroom. Jonathan reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, a silent plea. She didn't pull away, but her expression was unreadable. She was enduring, surviving day by day. After hours of tense waiting, the jury returned. A single piece of paper held the weight of a family's trauma and a nation's scrutiny. Sasha stood as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts, including attempted murder. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Sasha's knees wobbled, her face drained of all color. She trembled, clutching the table in front of her for support. Tears spilled down her cheeks, mascara smudging as she turned to Jonathan, eyes wild, pleading, broken. But he did not meet her gaze. His head was bowed, his expression one of silent devastation. Victoria held Grace tighter. Judge Caroline White's voice was crisp, unwavering. Sasha Moretti, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life in a federal correctional facility with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The gavel struck like a thunderclap. Sasha sobbed openly now, no longer able to maintain the icy composure that had carried her through the trial. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, reporters rapidly typing or whispering into their microphones as camera lenses clicked like a chorus of crickets in the heat of summer. Everyone assumed that was the final dramatic beat of the saga. Then Jonathan stood. He walked slowly to the front, surprising even his own attorney. The judge raised a brow. "Mr. Harrington." "Your Honor," Jonathan said, his voice barely steady, "if I may, I'd like to make a statement." Cameras turned. People leaned forward. The judge nodded cautiously. Jonathan turned to face Sasha. "I won't drag this out. I know I don't deserve anyone's sympathy, not hers, not Victoria's, not the public's. I created this mess. I led someone on, lied to the woman I vowed to love, and opened a door to chaos. I told myself I was in control when I wasn't. And that arrogance, my arrogance, almost cost the lives of 2 people. The courtroom was completely silent. Even Sasha stilled. Jonathan's voice cracked. "Sasha, I don't forgive you. I can't. You tried to murder the mother of my child. You almost killed my daughter. But I also can't deny that I helped shape the storm that destroyed you. I don't say this to lessen your guilt. I say this because I carry my own." Victoria looked on expression unreadable, but her eyes glistened. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right, not for you," Jonathan added, locking eyes with Sasha for the first time, but for Victoria and Grace. "I'm not here to cleanse myself. I'm here to acknowledge that this isn't just your downfall. It's mine too." Then he turned, slowly walked back, and sat beside his wife and child. The courtroom erupted as reporters rushed to transmit his statement. News headlines the next day read, "Jonathan's Last Confession. A Billionaire's Reckoning." Social media exploded, split between those who admired his honesty and those who called it damage control. Too little too late. Sasha was escorted away, wailing incoherently, her voice echoing down the corridor, as if trying to claw her way back into a life she could never return to. Outside, protesters held signs. Some blamed Sasha. Others blamed Jonathan. Some blamed the entire culture of wealth and power that allowed such betrayal to fester unchecked. But for Victoria and Jonathan, the storm had finally passed its peak. Later that night, in the quiet hush of their hospital suite, Victoria looked down at Grace, then up at Jonathan. "She'll never know what happened, right? She'll know the truth," he said gently, "but she'll also know how strong her mother was." Victoria nodded, cradling the child. For the first time in weeks, her grip around Grace relaxed ever so slightly. That night, Jonathan didn't sleep much. He sat in the hospital chair beside them, watching over both of them, not as a tech mogul or a public figure, but as a man who had almost lost everything, and now knew what mattered most. The courtroom verdict echoed through the city like the final thunderclap after a devastating storm. Sasha Moretti had been sentenced, her sobs and curses still ringing in the ears of the nation. But for Jonathan and Victoria Harrington, the true aftermath was just beginning, not in a courtroom but within the fragile, fractured walls of their own home. The public spectacle began to fade. Tabloid headlines slowly gave way to fresher scandals, and the news cycle, ever hungry, latched onto another celebrity divorce, another political controversy. But inside the Harrington estate, the echoes lingered, each hallway a haunting reminder of betrayal. Each room steeped in memories, tainted by suspicion and grief. Victoria spent several more days in the hospital after Sasha's sentencing. Grace, born a month early, remained under close watch in the neonatal unit. Though small, she was strong. Nurses marveled at her tiny fists, always curled with surprising strength. "She's a fighter," one of them said to Victoria during a midnight feeding. "Just like her mom." That small sentence touched Victoria more deeply than the nurse could have known. Jonathan visited every day, always quiet, always bearing some small gesture, a favorite snack, a blanket, a paperback novel. But Victoria remained guarded. She allowed his presence, but not his intimacy. Every time he reached for her hand, she gave him just enough to stay hopeful, but not enough to believe they were healed. When mother and daughter were finally discharged, returning to the Harrington estate felt like stepping onto a crime scene. The sprawling mansion had once symbolized power, elegance, and prestige. Now its every corner seemed to whisper, this is where it almost ended. The conservatory where Victoria had been poisoned was the most haunting. The scent of jasmine still clung to the air, deceptively beautiful. The same wicker furniture remained polished but unredeemed. Jonathan suggested tearing it down. "We'll build something new, a nursery wing, a library, anything you want." Victoria paused at the glass doorway, baby Grace asleep against her shoulder. "No," she said softly, "this happened here, and if I tear it down, it wins. I need to face it, every day, until it loses power over me." Jonathan admired her strength even as it kept him at a distance. She wasn't trying to erase the past. She was determined to rise above it. They resumed life, but everything was different. Victoria poured herself into motherhood. Her entire world became centered around Grace, her feeding schedule, her growth milestones, her giggles that filled the echoing halls of a house that had once been too silent. There were days Victoria wouldn't stop watching her daughter sleep, fingers barely touching the soft down of her hair, as if assuring herself that she was real and safe. Jonathan, meanwhile, faced the fallout professionally. Centerra's board had stood by him during the trial, but their patience was not infinite. Investors demanded reassurances. Shareholders demanded direction. The company's image had taken a bruising, and Jonathan's once golden reputation now carried a tarnish. He issued public apologies, sat for difficult interviews, and announced a donation campaign to support maternal health research and mental wellness, a calculated move, yes, but also a sincere one. His guilt had turned into a kind of mission, make this mean something. More significantly, he began therapy, at first reluctantly, but he quickly realized he needed help processing the emotional wreckage he had caused. His therapist, a sharp yet empathetic woman named Dr. Lena Rourke, pulled no punches. "Why did you cheat?" she asked on the third session. He had no good answer. "I wanted something more, something exciting, and now I'd give anything to go back and just, be bored." Dr. Rourke raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you're finally learning the difference between desire and value." He met with her twice a week, and slowly, through the vulnerable work of confronting his own selfishness, Jonathan began to change, not just for Victoria's sake, but for his own, for Grace. At home, progress came in ripples. Victoria agreed to attend marriage counseling. Their sessions were cautious, layered with long silences and unresolved resentment. Victoria's pain still hovered between them like a third presence in the room. "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again," she said, once her voice trembling. "You held my hand in bed while building a life with someone else." "I know," Jonathan replied. "And I'm not asking for blind trust. I'm asking for time and truth." So that became their foundation, time and truth. Together they took small steps. Evening walks with Grace in a stroller. Sunday brunches where they dared laugh at Grace's messy attempts to eat scrambled eggs. One afternoon, Victoria allowed Jonathan to hold her hand again, just for a moment. Still, the past clawed back at them. Letters from Sasha arrived periodically, written from prison in rambling, unpredictable tones, some begging for forgiveness, others full of venom. Jonathan never opened them. He stored them in a desk drawer locked. He didn't need to read her words. He was living their consequences. Charles Palmer. Victoria's father remained skeptical of Jonathan's redemption. At first he avoided his son-in-law entirely. But over time, observing Jonathan's transformation and the bond growing between father and daughter, he began to thaw. He even partnered with Jonathan on a charitable initiative, a foundation for women who had survived domestic abuse and emotional manipulation. Victoria, to the world's surprise, joined as its spokesperson. At the launch gala, Victoria took the stage in an elegant navy gown, baby Grace nestled in a silver stroller beside her. "When I was lying in a hospital bed, uncertain if my baby or I would survive, I thought everything I'd built had been taken from me," she told the crowd. "But I realized something in that darkness. What matters most is what we do with our pain. Whether we let it consume us or turn it into something that saves others." Applause thundered through the ballroom. In that moment, Victoria reclaimed her power not as a socialite or heiress, but as a survivor. Behind the curtain, Jonathan watched her speak, eyes full of reverence. Not because she had forgiven him completely, she hadn't, but because she had risen and in doing so helped him begin to rise too. Their marriage was no longer defined by perfection. It became a space of honesty. Some nights they slept in separate rooms. Other nights they shared dreams of Grace's future. The healing came in layers, not all at once, but it came. The media occasionally stirred rumors that Jonathan was writing a memoir, that Victoria was considering a return to her interior design career, that Grace would one day inherit not just wealth, but a legacy forged through fire. Whether any of it was true didn't matter. The real story unfolded in private moments: Grace's first steps across a sunlit hallway, a quiet dinner where no one brought up the trial, a family photo taken without staging or polish. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the conservatory glass, Victoria walked in alone. The room had been untouched since the poisoning, but now it was filled with Grace's toys and a rocking chair. She sat holding her daughter, watching her tiny hand grasp a plush giraffe. Jonathan walked in quietly. "She loves this room," he said. "I didn't think I could ever come back here," Victoria whispered. "But she makes me brave." He didn't speak. He just sat beside her, not touching, but near. "Do you think we'll be okay?" she asked after a long pause. He looked at her. Really looked. "I think we already are. Not perfect, but okay." And for the first time in a long time she smiled. Not just for Grace or for the cameras or the world, but for herself. Despite the twists and turns, the chilling attempt on Victoria's life, the explosive courtroom revelations, and the mistress's shocking conviction, the Harringtons persevered. They discovered that second chances come at a steep cost, and healing only emerges through honesty, resolve, and heartfelt remorse. Today, Jonathan remains devoted to rebuilding the trust he once shattered, while Victoria finds new purpose championing causes that support vulnerable women and mothers. Little Grace, born amidst chaos, grows in an environment that resonates with hard-won serenity. Now, dear viewers, if this tale of passion, betrayal, and redemption gripped your heart, we invite you to join us on this storytelling journey. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who appreciate a riveting, real-life drama, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that reveal the hidden truths of human nature. Together, let's continue exploring tales that remind us of life's fragile yet enduring grace.